how not to fail, where to spend the time, because the time is like what kills a lot of entrepreneurs. Is they're too in the weeds, they're too in the business, and they're not focusing on how to grow the business and how to look at it from a whole different perspective and just think like, if I were to buy this business, what would I do differently, instead of just, I'm in this business, how do I keep it alive? Habits that I'm still trying to break from the business, like even if the prior owner's gone and they were his habits, not wanting to invest money because it goes into your pocket. I've been trying to grow a culture of like we're a faith-based company, we're building a great product, we're trying to just make the product even better, we're trying to smile when our clients come out.
Welcome, everybody, to the next episode of the Construction MF'ers podcast. My name is Scott Peper. I am the CEO and founder of Mobilization Funding, and today I have a great guest with me, someone I think you guys are all going to relate to very well. He's on his own business journey. He spent 7 or 8 years going into the world of figuring out what he wanted to do next, and once he figured that out, he strategically bolted on different skills and experiences, whether it was reading great books, whether it was talking about businesses, sharing businesses, and figuring out how he wanted to run them. We're going to talk about purpose and culture, and you're going to learn a little bit more about him and his journey, as well as some of the things he's seen people do really well and some things you can avoid. Trey, what's up?
What's going on, man?
Yes, welcome. Thanks for coming.
Of course.
Dude, the marine business. Everybody loves talking about being on the water, trying to figure out how they can get on the water more, and you figured it out.
Somewhat.
Nice. Tell me about how you got your passion for the business and the water, and like how you piggyback that now into what you're doing.
So this was never the plan. Obviously, this wasn't my long-term goal. I didn't want to be a marine contractor, but I grew up in Tampa, been here my whole life, spent most every weekend fishing or going to our lake house in Gainesville and wakeboarding and doing the same thing when I got to college in Tallahassee. We were fishing or hunting every single weekend on the water and spending every weekend on the dock. And once I realized that I wanted to own a company and stop working for a corporation, I just decided to start looking, and this one popped up. There's a couple others that I went down the road on, but my wife ended up making the decision of something that we both kind of love, is just being on the water and being on a dock every day, and we want to build a product that we would build ourselves. So that's kind of where we went. It's marine construction.
Here's what I love the most. So there's a problem right now in construction, period, industry. There's a lot of different stats, but half the population of construction clients, workers today, are going to exit in the next 10 years, either retire out or just opt out. Mm-hmm. And bringing this younger generation into the construction world is a huge shift and push in all construction businesses. Yeah. Matter of fact, we were just at a conference out in San Antonio called the Dirt World, which think like 250 site contractors, well, actually way more than that, 250 companies, but probably like 1,400 people there. Multiple companies, amazing speakers, and the entire thing is about bringing the next generation in, telling actual real stories about what the construction industry can offer. So I thought it was great in your experience. Here you are, you're on the water, you have passion, you go to college, you come out, you get into different private equity, you get into different corporate America, and yet you shift to go find all those things in the construction industry. Now, buying the business might be different than leaving high school and going into the trades.
Yeah.
But that happens all the time too. Mm-hmm. So tell me a little bit about what, when you left college and went into corporate America, what was the draw to that? And then what was the draw out of that?
So I always had a rough plan in my mind of what I wanted to learn out of college. Because college, I feel like I didn't learn a ton. I wasn't a great student. But graduating, I realized here's my opportunity to actually learn in the workforce. I learned more from doing than reading. So I decided I wanted to learn how to buy a company and how to operate it in order to sell. That was always my goal. So started that by going to Tech Data, working in corporate finance. And Tech Data is, in case anyone doesn't know, is a massive company. It's the biggest company in Florida. They did around $44 billion in revenue a year while I was there. And we were on the M&A team. There was a small team, 5 guys, but we were buying companies left and right. And we were also looking through the entire P&L of ways to cut, because it's a distributor, so their margins are paper thin. Any kind of dollar savings is huge, because you got a company that's doing $44 billion, but you got a EBITDA that's in the millions. Mm-hmm. So we were trying to save as much money as we could, and we did all these different strategy initiatives on how to drop that dollar down, and we ended up saving the company a ton of money. And my last year, we spent the whole year selling the company to Apollo Global. So I learned how to buy a company, there, I learned how to sell our company because we were on the sales team. So I learned both there. Then after that, I kind of hopped around just different little jobs to try to figure out everything that I didn't know yet. So I went and worked in consulting, doing M&A consulting, where I was figuring out like integration and separation work and how to integrate companies. So if I were to buy a company and bolt on something, how do I integrate it? How do I get the systems in line? How do I get the people and culture in the right fit? So I spent a lot of time doing that, working for RSM, and that was huge for me. After that's where I kind of really wanted to buy a company, and I didn't know how to do it yet. So I was trying to save up. I was trying to do everything I could, and the jobs that I had, I was just kind of bouncing around a little bit between venture capital roles. And I realized just right when I got married, we were like, now's the time. Like, we don't have kids yet. We don't have any kind of, like, my mortgage is super low. We don't have any car payments. We might as well just buy a company. Like, what do we have to lose? We don't have anything to lose. So that's when we made the decision. But yeah, my whole career was kind of designed in my mind towards like, how do I do this myself?
I love that. I don't know if people listening to this will have that. Not the average person knows exactly what they want at those particular periods of time. I mean, you're a young guy, but I think you probably just walk through what I would assume college is 4 years and probably another 5 years of experience after that or more.
A little more, probably 6 or 7. Yeah.
So there's like, you got 7 and 4. There's 11 years of experience from the time you're out of high school that you've sort of understood and knew what you wanted, and I'm sure you've refined that path. Mm-hmm. But imagine if you didn't know exactly what you wanted to do. In your instance, the way I guess I asked the question is, how did you confirm that was what you wanted to do along that 7-8 year journey as you kept testing it and like bolting on, okay, I need to learn this skill, I need to learn that skill, I need to get that experience such that you could then execute?
I knew it was what I wanted to do just because like getting a salary it's great, like, but it feels like handcuffs to an extent. Like I'm working 100 hours a week, I'm doing all this stuff trying to please my boss, and I'm not proud of I built a beautiful model. Like I was an Excel wizard, but I didn't feel any like pride behind that. Like it wasn't rewarding. I wasn't satisfying anyone. It wasn't putting smiles on anyone's face. I was just kind of easing anyone's pain because their model was done for them. So there wasn't any satisfaction behind getting that salary, in my opinion. And any kind of side hustle that I did, like I think I told you about me flipping boats. Since high school, I've been buying boats off Craigslist and flipping them. And that's a market where everyone's like, you don't make money in boats. Everyone loses money in boats. It's break out another 1,000. That's what it stands for. But I thought the opposite. I was like, I'm going to go into this market and I'm going to flip boats and make money and enjoy the boat for a year. And I did that for, I want to say like 6 years. And it was awesome. I sold my last boat a year ago from yesterday. I cried yesterday because I'm done with the boat. But yeah, so I just, those dollars were much more rewarding to me because I spent time fixing up the boat. I spent time taking good pictures and making sure it was working correctly before I sold it, and finding the right buyer and finding the buyer for a price that was maybe unreasonably high and still being able to sell it. That just, for some reason, that felt way more rewarding than getting a salary every week. So I kind of knew that buying a company or running a company was going to be like where I wanted to be.
So looking at going back to your experience, I think one of the things that a lot of folks in our audience struggle with or try to find ways to get better and better at, and if you think, I don't know, there's a great book called The E-Myth Revisited. Have you ever read that book? Mm-hmm. Okay. I've talked about it a lot on here, but for those of you that don't know what The E-Myth is a book about Sarah the baker, and it talks about these 3 traits that you have: a technician, and you have a manager, operations, and then a finance and entrepreneur. And the manager and the operations and finance component in construction is one of the most typically missed pieces because you can have 1, maybe 2 dominant traits, but no one has all 3. But you need all 3 for a business. And so if you think of construction, it's very technical. You have an electrician, a plumber, or a tradesman comes in with the craft. And they then have the entrepreneurship to go step out. But it's that other piece. You've now taken a path where you've bought those skills and attributed them in certain ways. Yeah. Tell me a little bit about why that's so critical and what you've learned and how you've implemented it. When you started assessing different construction businesses, how did some of that experience and knowledge that you built inside, not only the learning these technical businesses, removing costs from them, integrating them in, buying them, analyzing them, and then also now trying to operate them, how did you assess that in your process to be successful?
Yeah, definitely. So I think like I said, my goal in my career before buying was to learn how to buy. But I think what I learned more that wasn't my plan was how not to fail, because so many companies don't make it. So many companies they fail for so many different reasons, and a lot of it is just because they're not investing in the right area. They're putting too much money on one product, and that product's earning an X ROI, and their cost of capital is more than that, and they're just losing value and destroying value. So there's no point in doubling down in that area, even if it is selling like hotcakes. You can't justify that to your financial model. So I think I learned the most about like how not to fail, how to invest in the right things, how to make sure your product is proven, make sure your costs are correct, make sure you're charging the right amount for it, and charge more if you're not, because you're worth more. So a lot of it is just trying to figure out where to spend the time, because the time is like what kills a lot of entrepreneurs. Is they're too in the weeds, they're too in the business, and they're not focusing on how to grow the business and how to look at it from a whole different perspective, and just think like, if I were to buy this business, what would I do differently, instead of just, I'm in this business, how do I keep it alive?
What do you think the reason for that is? Like, why do you think that becomes a typical behavior of a business owner, even in construction? Because I know you've looked at a lot of those, and I agree with you. I think a lot of even construction business owners say, yeah, you know what? I don't even know. Like, I don't know why I keep doing this. You know, what do you think is the reason that those pieces get missed and they just keep kind of repetitive? If I were to summarize what I think you heard, it'd be more like repeat behavior, just over and over again without making an adjustment.
I think it's just habit. We're all creatures of habit. Like, I don't know if you read the book Atomic Habits, but it kind of talks about how to get out of those and how to just make yourself avoid those habits. Spend 21 days, I think is the number. Like, if you don't do it for 21 days, you're never going to do it again. So just, I think like the business I acquired, there's so many habits that I'm still trying to break from the business. Like, even if the prior owner's gone and they were his habits, the guys are used to listening to that. They're used to like following those orders. And all of a sudden I step in and I'm like, why do we do this like that? And they're like, well, we've always done it like that. I'm like, well, how can we break that habit? Because it's not right. It's not working. It's taking you an hour longer to do something that, if I go spend $100 on a tool that will solve that problem, we're good. We saved that hour. Like, that hour's worth more to me than $100 because I'm paying you guys that hour, and you're doing that every single day. So there's a lot of just habits that people get stuck into. I think it's also a lot of like not wanting to invest money because it goes into your pocket. So these smaller companies, like, you've got something like I'm talking about, like a small tool, like they need an angle grinder or something to take apart this one piece. Most company owners wouldn't go buy that product because they're like, oh, we've got something that'll do that. We go use something else, we'll figure it out. And they'll go use some other tool and it won't work as well, and it'll take way too long, and they're just stuck in that habit of like, oh, let's get creative, let's figure out a way to solve it, instead of, why, like, when we do this, how is it hurting us? It's taking an hour out of our time. That hour's worth, to me, it's worth a good amount because I'm paying the whole crew that like hourly wage. So I think you're just stuck in habits and it's so hard to get out of.
In your experience, do you find that when you were looking at different business, there's certain business owners that they had the information in front of them, but they failed to make the right decision and therefore just repeated the habit? Or do you feel like they didn't have the right information in front of them, so they just repeated the habit?
I think a lot is lack of information.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Because a lot of these companies that are started are guys that are really good at the trade, not necessarily good at running a company. So I think they just don't know what to look at. They don't look at the right numbers. They're not running the right reports. They're not pulling the right P&L. They're just not observing the areas of weakness that they do have, because they don't know where to look. They just know how to do their job well, which is operating the company.
Yeah, I agree with you. One of the things we talk about a lot, and it comes out a lot even when we're in the podcast or with our customers, when we run a project cash flow for them and we show them what their project, how the money, the costs that they've bid. I mean, they've won the project, they bid it, they have the margin in it, they have the work schedule. It's locked, like it's getting started. Yeah. Well, one missing piece that almost all things we see here they don't have is they haven't taken now what the costs are and broken them out across the schedule that they want to keep, such that they can understand how much money do I actually have to invest in this job from the costs, right? Before it either becomes cash flow positive, is my actual margin. And you could have a great project. It could be, even a 20 or 30% margin project and a big job. But like the 30% margin job never cash flows. You have to invest, 80% of the cost, and it doesn't cash flow. Yeah. And then you have the 20% margin job that you only need to invest like 20% of the cost, and it cash flows within like 2 pay apps, right? Yeah. And when we show folks the cash flows, one thing that I found incredibly cool about it that I didn't really have appreciation for is they make great decisions when the information's there.
Yeah.
And so I learned, I'm like, you know what? This isn't a lack of knowledge. It's actually a lack of information. And that's where we started focusing on so much this project cash flow tool and like your accounting services and getting the right accountant and CPA that knows your world and knows your business, leverage their other customers' experiences, get the reports you need in front of you.
Exactly.
And then I feel like they make great decisions. And I was wondering if you experienced that same thing in the analyzation of these businesses.
Definitely. When I was buying the companies, I was looking at their P&Ls, and like on Biz Buy Sell and any like brochure that a broker would send you, they're all kind of basic. But then once you like actually get down the road, they'll send you the monthly. So when you look at the monthly, it's night and day to like the yearly cash flow, because the yearly cash flow can look awesome. Like, oh, their SDE is huge. Like, what all goes into that? Oh, these buckets go into that. Awesome. And then you go into the monthly, and you're like, they've lost $15,000 for the last 3 months. Yet they're expecting like a massive month here. Like, they're just fronting a ton of cash that just doesn't make any sense, especially in my business, because our jobs are in and out 2-3 weeks, and we get paid same day. We don't have any terms, so we shouldn't have to worry about that. But the business is just run like that because it's trying to survive. I mean, some months you had to just pay the guys and hope that we had work come in, but now we're in a different boat because hurricanes destroyed every dock in Tampa. But
yeah, that's a good segue. So we did just get destroyed in Tampa by 2 hurricanes a couple of months ago here, Helene and Milton, and a lot of the Southeast too. Talk a little bit maybe about how you were positioned in your business specifically to help folks that you serve and come back and help the community get back the dock that they need, like the services you provide and how you do it, and what you kind of feel differentiates you and the other marine contractors out there.
Yeah, so we just bought 4 months ago the company, and I mean, getting hit with 2 hurricanes in the first 2 months is pretty crazy, because the guy bought the company from us and running it for 20 years, and I've asked him, like, part of my diligence was, like, are you praying for hurricanes? Like, do hurricanes bring a lot of work to you? He's like, honestly, I've never had work in 20 years from a hurricane, which was just shocking to me, because right now it's the opposite. Like, Helene took out every saltwater dock with a surge. Milton flooded all the lakes up north of Tampa, so those docks got destroyed. But I think what differentiates our product is if you can just go ride any of the lakes that we build on, Lake Carroll, for example, you'll see 5 docks that are all dilapidated, and there's one in the middle of them that's perfectly fine. And that's the company I acquired, and that's why I bought them, is because their product is superior. They build a better dock, and the only marketing the company ever did was put a little tag at the end of the dock, a little white tag, which are all faded now because they put them on 20 years ago, but the docks are still standing. So what we're doing right now is basically, it's a good thing I bought a company instead of building from scratch, because I'm getting so many calls asking for the previous company, because I have the same phone number now. And I'm just saying, hey, we have a new company, but yeah, we can come look at your dock. And it's a dock we built 10 years ago, 20 years ago, which 20 years is the typical lifetime of a dock. But if it's a 20-year-old dock, then I usually won't recommend a repair. I'd recommend we rebuild completely. But a lot of them have just been just small repair jobs, and it's tough to keep the schedule because I'm booked out for a while now. But we're trying to knock out weekend jobs for all the people that just have a small repair, just to keep, especially if it's a dock we built, because we want to keep our name up, want to keep our reputation good. So every weekend I've got another repair job that's just a dock we built at some point. So
that's awesome.
Best way to please our customers.
What well, they were 100-year storms, so I guess the theory behind that is
so
I guess the owner was correct. Yeah. But you know what, I think what you're trying to do, and we talked about this before we started, a little bit of figuring out, like, how can you innovate the business also and create different verticals, whether it's some type of recurring maintenance model or some other type of, you're on the water, you're there. If you provide a great service and people trust you, there's a lot of other things you might be able to do.
Yeah.
Maybe you can talk a little bit about the innovation and thought process behind how you're thinking that through and why.
Yeah, so when I was looking to buy a company, a lot of the companies I went down the road on were franchises, which majority of franchises are recurring revenue models. Mm-hmm. And one I got fairly far on was a striping business, which I had never heard of, but they just stripe lines in parking lots. Mm-hmm. It's super simple. They come back every 6 months. It's Florida. The heat tears them apart. The rain tears them apart. And they just go paint lines. The margins are insane, and they have a recurring revenue model. So I got pretty close to acquiring that or investing into that franchise, and I got to the point where I'm like, why am I buying a franchise when I could build something similar? So why don't I go find an industry where nothing is franchised yet and then invest in something similar? So marine construction, I acquired without knowing kind of where that avenue would be. I just acquired blindly. I acquired for other reasons, and I ended up finding a good way because my crew actually had the idea of what they wanted to do and what they thought would be a good model. And I had an idea myself. So combining those two, I think we've created like a opportunity for a service model where we do boat lift maintenance. Boat lifts, people don't put oil in them, put grease in them, do anything they need to do every single year, every 6 months to keep it operating. And then the boat lift fails or it makes some god-awful noise when you go up and down and every neighbor's looking at you. And there's all kinds of issues with boat lifts that if you maintain them correctly, they should last a long time. So especially on salt water, they just get torn apart by that salt. There's another opportunity with cables, like boat lift cables. People will wind it up and they'll get off the boat. Maybe they've had a little drink that day or something, and then they'll just flip the switch, get the boat up off the lift, and that's it, and they'll walk inside, and they won't care about how the cables look on the pole. So there's a pole that the cables kind of wind to, and a lot of times they'll just have those wrapping, and if it's wrapping over the other cables, there's a chance it could slip, and all of a sudden your boat falls on one side and something breaks maybe. So just rewinding those, making sure all the cables are in line, greasing the gun, everything like that, and then also scraping oysters. So saltwater docks are notorious for tearing you apart if you fall on them. Mm-hmm. There's just oysters all over the side. It also tears apart the wood. They don't last very long once they get covered. A lot of companies are doing the wraps. They'll wrap it before when they build the dock. But there's not a lot of companies that are going in afterwards and taking the oysters off. Because once you put that pole in the water without it being wrapped, it's not only the oysters, you get worms too. There's worms that'll go into the wood and tear it apart. So there's no point in wrapping it after that. The only thing to do is just scrape the oysters off. So I found that that's my opportunity for creating a recurring revenue model where we go in, it's not going to be a huge ticket, but it's every 6 months, every client, and it's a business where my goal is for it to feed my other company. So I've got that on the side that's just keeping relationships, keeping everyone happy, but it's also selling docks to my dock building business. Mm-hmm. So if their dock's not looking good, the guy that's going over there and maintaining can say, hey, like, Trey, their dock's not looking great. You should give these guys a call and just say, hey, if you want to update your dock, we'd be happy to do so. We have this much room on the calendar. And same for us building docks. We build a dock. All of a sudden we sign you up for this, and then every 6 months we show up at your house and we do this. Yeah. And it just keeps a guy busy. It would be a low cost of capital to put up. All we need is like a fan and one guy who's trained and just let him run. It's
smart too because it keeps you in front of that customer for the life of them and on an ongoing basis, which is really a huge key to any type of customer maintenance or relationship. Yeah. And it also gives you a chance to exceed their expectations in multiple different facets, which is only going to build more trust and respect for the business. So of course they're going to give you at least a chance to build the dock, let alone build it. Of course.
At least get the first bid, which is all I want. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. You mentioned a lot of things, but one that stuck out to me earlier on, and I wrote it down, is you mentioned culture and look at that. Talk about that. Let's see, what does that mean to you in the business? How important is it to the business?
I think it's huge. So we recently hired a new guy, and he added to the culture pretty instantly. And I realized, because when I bought, it was kind of a depressing situation. Like, the guys weren't too happy with the current owner. There wasn't like a lot of chemistry between them and the current owner, and they just didn't get along on certain things. And it was a result of working 20 years with a guy, and you butt heads enough to just have some kind of bad taste in your mouth. So me coming in was just, I think it was a bit of a shock. Obviously they didn't know he was selling the company. I met them in a very awkward situation of like, hey, this is Trey, he's your new boss. So it wasn't as smooth as could be. But since then, I think I've been trying to grow a culture of like we're a faith-based company. We're building a great product. We're trying to just make the product even better. We're trying to smile when our clients come out. We're not going to frown. We're not going to cuss on site. We're going to be clean. We're going to leave the job site clean when we leave every day. We're going to leave every tool away. We're going to be safe as can be, and we're going to create a culture of just joking around all day. If we're happy all day, everyone's going to love their job. You're on the water anyway. It can't be too bad. There's some days where it's like 75 degrees, and these guys should be paying me to be out there because it's so nice out. But yeah, it's just creating a culture of like, I want people to be happy on the job site instead of any negativity, because the negativity just, it sucks everyone, yeah.
So going back to thinking about like, okay, we got a bunch of different business owners in all different contracting businesses, whether you're in marine, the marine construction, docks, electricians, plumbers, this all, but the math is very systematically similar in all the businesses. What are 2 or 3 things that you wish, or you would like, if everyone just knew, if you want to start somewhere, start with these 2 or 3 things to get your business a little bit more on track, give yourself more access to certain information, therefore you'll be able to make these types of decisions. So if folks are listening to that right now and you're like, man, I think that's all great, but I still don't know what to do. Like, what are 2 things or 2 places they could start?
Working capital's the first one. I mean, as much as I've learned about working capital, working in finance, like, and what it needs to maintain it and how it affects your business, I don't think it can prepare you for how actually hard it is to just keep an eye on how much money you have in the bank in order to pay your crew. Because if you're selling a product, it's totally different. You have time to kind of find a financing, or if you need to, for buying some products you're selling. But if you have a crew that's depending on you, having money to pay them every week is, I mean, there were weeks we had to pay them out of my wife's bank account because we just didn't know what we were doing. Like, we got into this company and all of a sudden, like, the first week is just dead. Like, I was sold a company that had 2-month backlog. That was basically 2 months of hot leads that I had to go chase down myself. And so the first couple of weeks we were just kind of struggling, and I was trying to figure out, like, what am I going to do? And there were sleepless nights. I was working all day long every day trying to figure out how to pay the guys, and it worked out. We're in a great spot now. But those moments are just, you can't prepare yourself physically, emotionally, mentally for those at all. The other one, I think, is just realizing that, like, if you're working in corporate America, you have maybe a team beneath you. You're not signing their paycheck every day. It's not the revenue you're bringing in that's paying them. When you own a company, it's the revenue you bring in that pays them. So I don't have a sales team, it's just me. So not only do I have to feed myself, I've got to feed my whole team and create enough work for us all to eat and to pay off everything else between trucks and equipment and supplies. It's a lot bigger undertaking than you think, and I'm guessing it's similar to having kids. I don't have kids yet, but I have dependents. Like, their lives kind of depend on me, and not only do I want to keep them fed and keep them happy financially, but I also want to improve their lives daily and try to be a positive impact on their lives when they need me, because they can come to me for anything. So that's just it's a big weight that you've got to realize you're taking when you buy a company.
I mean, I think you said it very well, and I couldn't agree with you more. It's the hardest thing that you never can have any preparation or experience for. It doesn't matter if you think about it. It doesn't matter if you hear it. We can read a million books, can hear you say it, can hear me say it, or someone else, but you'd never know what that feels like until you just go through one of those moments. Yeah. It's definitely insane. Working capital. Okay, I know what you mean, but someone that hears working capital, I could hear someone on the other and be like, okay, yeah, no doubt, guys. Okay, I get it. But how do I go about getting the working capital? How do I go about figuring out how much working capital do I need? Dive one little step deeper into that. Imagine someone just doesn't have access to they don't have access individually, so they're looking at all the different options they may have, whether it's friends and family, it could be an investor, it could be trying to get a bank line of credit, it could be all those. Like, walk a little bit through that process, what they should be doing.
Yeah, so when I bought the company, I thought I put enough in to pay for everything for at least a little bit. And the terms I created on the deal were first 3 months all on me. I'm not paying any kind of loan to I did seller financing, so I'm not paying him anything for the first 3 months, just so I can get off my feet. But I think month 2, I sold a job on a golf course. We were doing a bridge over there, and I accidentally sent the terms with net 30. So we usually work with residents. I usually get paid day of. I get paid, my pay structure is pretty simple and it prevents any issues. I get paid 1/3 down when supplies drop, which is usually day 1, and then I get paid the 2/3 once they're happy with the product. So with the golf course project, like, it was a fairly big one. I had to foot the bill for all the supplies. They wanted all composite decking, which is very expensive. It's like $4 a foot, and this was a lot of it. So I had to foot all of that, and then I had to pay my guys as well because the project went longer than expected. I thought it was going to be a week. We got rained out half the week. So there were days where they were just sitting around, and I had to. It wasn't like a complete downpour where I could send them home that day. It was like it's going to rain an hour here. Oh, wait, let's rain an hour again later. It's typical Florida. Like we're just going to rain randomly, where the guys like don't go home because they think it's going to stop. They work a little bit more. They stop, work a little bit more. So it's like I got to pay them the full day. We really got anything done. So that was when it started like really setting in that working capital was going to kill me that week because I had to pay for all of this while I was waiting on a check that I didn't know when it was going to come because I forgot I put net 30 terms on. So, and I didn't get paid till day 30 in the mail. So I was sweating bullets that day.
What kind of things can someone do to analyze how much working capital they might need for whatever appropriate period of time they're trying to analyze the capital needs are?
So one, if you're buying a company, asking the seller, he would know. The guy I bought the company from told me off the bat, he's like, you need this much amount in the bank account every single week, or at least every month. He's like, because you'll spend it, it'll go up, it'll go down, but you need that amount. Any other base like industry, I think it's just you want to keep at least 2 months of survival in there, because there'll be a time when like you're going to need that, or something big's going to hit, or you're going to have some kind of insurance thing hit, you're going to have workers' comp or something. Like you got to have at least 2 to 3 months in reserves just sitting there to survive.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think too, then when you start bolting on growth, then you have to like exponentially figure it out even quicker, because depending on, and your cash flow cycle is fantastic. A lot of people would say 30-day terms. Man, I'd love that. I'm working off of 45 or 60. I sign 30 when it comes in 45, or costs go out. But once you start growing too, it's that cash flow you need to fuel your growth can't be the same operational cash flow you're pulling out, because that 2 months could all of a sudden evaporate fueling growth, which is not a bad thing. But then your normal operational stuff happens, and you need that 30 days of the 60 you had reserved. It's not there. And all of a sudden you're like, now the whole business has got pressure. Yeah. That's interesting. Is there anything that you think, the other thing I think you mentioned, which is really interesting, which is really smart, is driving top line revenue. I'm always cautious about bringing this up, particularly in the construction world, because you hear folks say a lot like, I had to take that job just to keep money coming in the door. But the job is actually will not operate cash flow positive, and it will be at a loss. And so, again, try to put on your thoughts like, well, why are they doing that? And imagine like how you mentioned drive revenue, and I could hear someone on the other end or watching this saying, yeah, see, I need to take that job.
Yeah.
Okay, but do you need to take any job just because it brings in, or what if it's a job that's losing, or it's not going to be good for you, or it doesn't cash flow, or it has limited margin or risk associated to it?
Yeah, so I look at it a weird way, in my opinion. I look at it based off the customer, like, do I like the guy? Is he going to be a pain? So there's a couple that are just like, you'll have a customer that wants to change every couple of days, and all of a sudden your project's delayed 2 weeks, and it's like, we had a project that was supposed to end here. I had everything else scheduled, and also my backlog is now pushed back 2 weeks, and I got to go call everyone saying, hey, we're not going to start for another 2 weeks after the day I told you, because this guy's been a pain. So you can kind of read those guys out early, in my opinion, and a lot of them I have been able to, and just upcharge off the bat, because you don't want that project, and if I don't want it, I'm going to put out a crazy number, and if I win it, I'm happy. If I lose it, I'm not too mad. So that's kind of how I've been doing it. But right now, since I've got so much demand from the hurricanes, that I've had to delay a bunch of like just small repair jobs, which 3 months ago when I bought the company, I would have gladly taken and put them on immediately. But that's because I didn't have any work. Now I've got so much work that I've got all these little jobs that are like 2-day job, 1-day job, 3-day job that are a couple $1,000. People don't want to pay a ton because it's a small little repair. And I have to say no. Like, it doesn't make sense for me economically to go take all my trailers, move over there, go do that job, and then come back to a big job. The margins don't make sense. Because for me, we usually need the barge for a lot of our work, because we got to go set pilings. And that was one of the biggest things the storm caused, is all the water coming in took all the pilings that had no weight on them up. So everyone's dock looks like a putting green. They got pilings up here, pilings down here, like their dock's just warped, and they want me to go reset those poles and make them lower again. But what they don't realize is that it cost me at least a half day to get my barge out of the water, move it over to your lake, and put it in. And that half day is half day of my whole crew that I've got to pay them to do nothing because they can't do anything until that barge is there. So no one wants to pay that amount because I'm going to charge them a good amount. So a lot of them I just have to say, no, like we're either rebuilding it or we're not touching it, because I don't know what we're going to get into when we start taking the dock apart.
Yeah, no, unless ideally you can get the barge on the lake, and you're like, I'm knocking out everything on this lake if you want me to do it.
Which is the case right now in Lake Carroll. Like we've had a couple of those, and I say yes because we're already there.
We're already there.
But if we're not there, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, that's cool. So tell me what's next for the business. You've been in it 4 months. You've gotten your good share of a couple kicks. You made some adjustments. You got a great macro factor in these storms that are, bad as the storms are, they're going to help. They're a little bit of a tailwind, I imagine, assuming you can figure it out.
Yeah.
What's next for the biz?
What's next is just expanding kind of our service offering. Like right now, the company has always been freshwater. It's always been freshwater, all North Tampa, like Lake Keystone, Carroll, everything up there, Magdalene, and they've never touched saltwater. There's actually more freshwater in Florida than there is saltwater waterfront, believe it or not.
Really?
Yeah.
I don't know if I knew
So
that.
there is, just because the rivers. But saltwater is still the bigger homes, the more money, they're harder to do the jobs, and you put bigger pilings in and you can charge way more. So for example, like putting in a piling on saltwater, people usually charge $1,100 each. We charge $450 for freshwater. Like it doesn't change it. Nothing changes. It's just the clientele you can charge more. So that's the goal, is to get to saltwater, and we've got my first saltwater job coming up this Saturday actually, which will be great. But yeah, I want to get a second crew and just start targeting saltwater. I think that's my next big avenue.
Nice. One last question for you.
Yeah.
I'm a business owner. I'm trying to think about my exit. I'm in the construction trades. You've obviously got great experience being a buyer of a business. You've looked around a lot. You've integrated a lot. How could I best position my business to be attractive to the right buyer such that someone would be interested to help me exit my business? And what can I do? What should I be paying attention to?
If it can run without you. So there's a good book I read called, I know I'm mentioning a lot of books today, but called Built to Sell. I don't know if you've read that one, but yeah, it's basically the guy's got a business that's a pain to run. He's struggling with cash flow, struggling with every single aspect of it. Goes and talks to a rich friend of his who kind of just figured it out and solved the problem of the world and how to build a company, and told him basically, these are the things you're good at. Invest everything in these. Get rid of these parts of the business that aren't working, that are causing a headache, and make the business so that you don't have to be a part of it. So, which in my mind, like I think my mind's changed a little bit on selling in the past couple months, because if I have a company that doesn't take me much effort to run and it can run without me, why would I sell?
Yeah.
Like that just sounds too good to be true. But if you are looking to increase the value of your company and sell it, I think creating a way where it can run without you and you're not necessary to it is the biggest key.
Yeah. Where would you start if you're someone who says, that's great, well, I don't know what to do now? Like how do you have a company that doesn't need you to be run, that doesn't need you to operate? What does it look like?
It looks like humbling yourself and hiring someone that can do your job for you. So a lot of business owners, in my opinion, they'll be the head of their company for 20 years and they're just so proud of it. They built it. It's all them. They did all the hard work and they're still doing the hard work. Mm-hmm. And it's so hard for them to step off that throne. But if you can go find someone and train someone and have someone below you that's willing to grow and learn everything about how the business runs, and all of a sudden they're the ones in charge, they can run the company. I think that's the main key, in my opinion. That, or it depends on the industry, but if you can create enough systems in place where you don't need to be there to run it. So if you've got enough like protocol, like, okay, this broke, we're going to go here, here, and here, and we're going to fix it. If you can create enough structure in the business where everything can like work out without you getting a phone call, then I think that's the other way.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. I think it's definitely adding the right people and talent, but you can only do that once you've built, and this is my opinion, once you've built systems and processes that everybody can lean on, then you can start to bring in talent that actually will fuel those systems and processes, make them even better. But that foundation of those systems and processes has got to be in place.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you try to just replace yourself with someone else is going to end up having to do the same exact thing, and that doesn't work either.
100%.
Yeah, that's cool. All right, we got a little what we like to call rapid fire questions. All right, so these are all about business. Just think. I'll ask you the question. Just think of the first thing that comes to your head and just let it go. What's the best advice you've ever received?
The best advice I've ever received is probably from my wife, and it was to buy a company that I would enjoy building myself. So building a product I would enjoy myself.
Yeah, you mentioned that earlier. Purpose, something you could like get your arms around.
Yeah,
I like that.
That was the big one.
What's your favorite business book?
Probably Built to Sell. It's more of a, I love business books, but that one's more of a story, more fun to read in my opinion.
If there's one for the construction world owner, business owner, your average business owner, so think of the folks that you talked to when you were thinking about buying their business, and you were like, you left those meetings, was there any book that came to mind? You're like, man, I should give this guy that book, or I should give this gal that book.
Either that one. Actually, probably just that one. I don't know if there's another one.
That's great. What's the most underrated skill in your industry?
Smiling. I think it's construction, it's blue collar, it's people like, they're not used to going in their yard to seeing someone smiling back at them. It's usually like, you go see a guy mowing your lawn and he's just in his work doing it. But if you've got a crew that's out there and you come out wanting to see the product, like it's a dock, it's a big investment. It's something you're going to enjoy every weekend for the rest of your life, hopefully. You want to go out there and like have someone you can talk to. And my crew is really good about like, the customer comes out, you smile, you ask them how their day's going, and you just tell them any questions they have, because they'll always have questions. And let them do the talking. Don't talk their ear off. But I think smiling is it's huge. It's
hard to be upset when you're smiling.
Yeah.
You can't really be unhappy if you're smiling, even if you're unhappy before you start.
Exactly.
I do have one other question for you, and I can't believe it's taken me this long to get to this, but you're doing something I think is so incredibly smart and really cool with the way you're engaging people on LinkedIn and sharing your path and journey of the story. So everything we've talked about here, if anyone, please go follow you on LinkedIn and go back and look at all your posts. You've been documenting this journey of buying this business and starting this business and the pain points and the problems, and you're really candid with it, which is really cool. Not normal. And you're kind of doing it before you know what you're doing either.
Before I'm successful.
Yeah, so it's kind of like a great way to look at it.
It's not working yet, but
What gave you the thought to do that? And why are you doing it?
Because I've told the story so many different times to everyone that asks, I thought I'd just post it so the question kind of goes away.
It's good.
Not out of like a shut up, you're annoying, like a more like, I'm getting this question a ton, I might as well just explain it for the people that can't ask me, that aren't running into me in the streets. Like I feel like it's desired right now, and everyone's kind of looking to buy a company. I've got a lot of friends that are doing the same thing, a lot of friends that have done similar things, so, and they're not documenting it either. Like my two friends that both own construction companies don't even have LinkedIn accounts. So
really?
Yeah. And one of them they both own massive, like 12 million plus revenue companies that are just, and they're 28 and they're not posting about it. And I think it's worthwhile. It's fun for me to get it out and document it, because I'll go back and read those, and there's lessons that I write down that I've forgotten about already. So I'll have to go back and read and reteach myself like what I was saying. So I don't know. I think it's fun. I've had a lot of people say the same thing, that they enjoy reading them. So
yeah,
I'm just going to keep it out.
It's a powerful way to do it. I would not stop if I were you. I'd keep going, because you know what? Here's the other thing I can tell you. Being a little bit farther in the business journey, there's going to be plenty to write about. It may evolve, but there's be plenty for you to write about.
I don't think it's going to stop. Yeah,
that's cool. Yeah. How can people find you? Aside from being on LinkedIn, where else can they find you, engage with you, find out more about your company?
Company is all online, allforwarddocs.com. We've got LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, everything like that. Find me. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn as well. Trey Lomel. That's about it. Nothing crazy.
We'll put all your stuff in the show notes too. But I appreciate you coming in, man.
Yeah,
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
Everybody, I hope you enjoyed this podcast. I hope you enjoyed Trey as much as I did. You've learned a lot today. He's covered a lot in his experience. So follow him on LinkedIn. He's going to keep sharing. He's really a great follow. I've enjoyed reading some of his stuff. Please, if you like this, share it with your friends. Let people know that there's something out here called the Construction MF'ers podcast. You can find me on LinkedIn as well and our YouTube channel at Mobilization Funding. In the meantime, have a great week and God bless you.